Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of unprotected talk, borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
I am sick and tired of people who say that if you debate and you disagree with this administration, somehow you're not patriotic, and we should stand up and say we are Americans and we have a right to debate and disagree with any administration.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator.
Today, Putin basically said in a long press conference that, all I want to do is protect the rights of the minorities, namely Russian speakers, and he's been on a campaign to give everybody who has any Russian connection, there are a lot of retired Russian military in Crimea, he's given them all Russian passports. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's what Hitler did back in the 30s.
We came, we saw, he died.
We've gone from overt psychosis to treason, sedition. The story today that broke in the New York Times is the greatest act against America that I've seen in my entire life. I've never seen anything like it. It's the kind of act that in a sane nation that was not drugged would bring about a revolution. A revolution that would unite the people. A revolution saying enough is enough. This corruption of the Clintons has gotten to a point where they must be immediately indicted and tried for the crimes against this nation. What am I talking about? It's the greatest scandal of your life. There is no greater scandal I have ever seen in my life. And it is about the uranium in the ground in the United States of America that was sold off to the Russians. And where did this article appear? It appeared in the right-wing New York Times. The right-wing New York Times reported, as a result of this incredible book about the money that's being doled out to all of these corrupt individuals, is the Russian president, an American president, and the woman who would like to be the next one. And at the heart of this tale, according to the New York Times, are several men, leaders of the Canadian mining industry, who are big donors to the endeavors of Bill Clinton and his family. They built, financed, and sold off to the Russians a company that would become known as Uranium One. There are names to these men. One of them is Frank Giustra, Giustra. And he is seen in a picture with former President Bill Clinton at a Clinton Foundation news conference in 2007. Beyond the uranium mines in Kazakhstan that are among the most lucrative uranium mines in the world, this sale, arranged by these men through Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, according to this article, at least allegedly, gave the Russians control of 1/5 of all the uranium production capacity in the United States. Do you have any idea what the strategic implications are for national security? Well, they are so grave that such a sale would have to have been approved by a committee composed of representatives from a number of U.S. governmental agencies. And among the agencies that would have had to approve this sale was none other than the State Department, then headed by Hillary Clinton. And as the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013, Canadian records show us that a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. Uranium One's chairman used his family foundation to make 4 donations totaling $2.35 million. That's peanuts. That's what the surface shows. And by the way, all of you good liberals, those contributions to the foundation run by, I think, the daughter, were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons, despite an agreement that Mrs. Clinton signed with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. Shortly after the Russians announced their intention to acquire a majority stake in Uranium One, guess what happened? Bill Clinton received $500,000 for a speech in Moscow from a Russian investment bank with links to the Kremlin that was promoting Uranium One stock. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? I'll go on. This New York Times examination of the Uranium One deal is based on dozens of interviews, as well as a review of public records and securities filings in Canada. But some of the connections between Uranium One and the Clinton Foundation were unearthed by Peter Schweizer. Schweizer is the most amazing author of our time. He's the author of the forthcoming book, Clinton Cash. And the fact of the matter is, this book should bring down the Democrat government. Now, I know the Republicans are corrupt. Don't get me wrong. Don't think I'm going to sit here and tell you I'm going to support Republicans right now. I know that there's corruption in that party that would make your head spin. However, there are different levels of everything. And this level of corruption approaches sedition, outright sedition. Now, the New York Times says this: whether donations played any role in the approval of the uranium deal is unknown. How could anyone listening to this show not understand what has gone on? How can anyone listening to this show tell me that you still believe Hillary Clinton is not only worthy of the office of the presidency with such a scummy, filthy relationship that the country itself can't stand anymore, but that the New York Times and other bastions of liberalism are calling it the disastrous Clinton post-presidency? The New York Times, as I just said, reported about the State Department's decision to approve the sale of uranium mines to a Russian company, which donated $2.35 million to the Clinton Global Initiative. And then a Russian investment bank promoted the deal, paid Bill $500,000 for a stinking speech in Moscow. The right-wing Washington Post reports that Bill Clinton received $26 million in speaking fees from entities that also donated to the Clinton Global Initiative. The Washington Examiner reports 22 of the 37 corporations nominated for a prestigious State Department award, and 6 of the 8 ultimate winners, while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, were also donors to the Clinton Family Foundation. In other words, they bought their awards. And Reuters, another bastion of the right, says that Hillary Clinton's family charities are refiling at least 5 annual tax returns after a Reuters review found errors in how they reported donations from governments and said they may audit other Clinton Foundation returns in case of other errors. I want to ask you something. If you filed a false tax return and you got caught, would your government, would your IRS, would Obama's IRS permit you to refile your tax return? They put you in jail. They wouldn't let you refile. They would have caught you. What do you mean, when you get caught, you refile? What, if you're Hillary Clinton, you do what you want? Yes. So the article goes on and says the Clinton campaign is batting down the darkest and most conspiratorial interpretation of these stories, and where all this leads remains to be seen. But the most positive interpretation is not exactly good. Do you get the picture or don't you? This is the most corrupt family in the history of the United States of America, according to every source that I can put together, and that includes all the liberal sources. Now, it's one thing to talk about overt corruption. It's another thing to talk about the destruction of our national security interests by selling off the uranium in our own soil. Did you hear what I just said to you? Uranium from our own nation was sold off to the Russians. Now, the secondary question here is, why is this story coming out now? Who is trying to take down Hillary, and who will benefit from this? That is the number one question on the minds of those who can think 2 steps ahead of the news. And I'm pretty sure I know why this is suddenly coming out. The corruption of Hillary Clinton is nothing new. Those of us in the business of investigating and talking about investigations have seen this dirt for years. But now that she's running and she's not sufficiently communistic enough, they're trying to destroy her in order to bring up the fake Indian, Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a very good thing, because Elizabeth Warren is so unpalatable as a candidate that even the most tepid Republican can beat her. That's the opening to the Savage Nation. The phone number here, and I open it up to you, the audience, with a number of questions, is 855-400-SAVAGE. Let me repeat, when I saw this uranium story and the money that was given to the Clinton Foundation and that Hillary was sitting as Secretary of State while this happened, internally I said this is the kind of story that brought down governments in the past and would bring down governments today if we had a legitimate populace and a legitimate government. This is the kind of scandal that led to the Russian Revolution. This is the kind of scandal that had people rioting in the streets because the actions of the Clintons cannot be accepted by any nation that wishes to survive. I'm going to take a quick break and come back to take your calls right here at 855-400-7282. Stay tuned.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust to protect my wealth. Call 800-BUY-COIN.
His company was like a bit player, and really had gone from a worthless shell company overnight, got this huge uranium mining deal, and then soon after that, Bill Clinton got a huge donation, $31 million, to his charitable foundation, followed by a pledge to donate $100 million more.
So the question is this really about the corruption that is emanating from the sewer called the Clinton Foundation? Or is it really a desire to replace Hillary Clinton, the most corrupt of all candidates in modern American history, as far as I can tell, with someone not as corrupt, but more to the left of her than the New York Times, the Washington Post, you know what I'm saying? In other words, they want a so-called progressive, which is a code word for socialist, communist, whatever you wish. As you know, American political campaigns are barred from accepting foreign donations. But foreigners may give to foundations in the United States. So Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Clinton Foundation, Uranium One, selling off the land rights in the United States of America to Russia in the form of a national security issue. National security issue, or I should say a strategic medal with national security implications of very grave nature, sold off to Russia right out of our own earth. You couldn't write a novel with a story as pronouncedly shocking as this. I just published, my book will be out in 3 weeks. I saw yesterday a jump from number 10,000 to, 500. Countdown to Mecca. If anyone wants to write a novel, all you have to do is pick up the uranium scandal of Hillary, Bill, and the Clinton Foundation, the Russians, the Canadians. You couldn't invent a story like this. Now, I don't know whether this is all coming because of the book or because of people within the Democrat Party who want her out of the picture because they want to replace her with someone further to the left. And here's a few names for you. Where's Joe Biden? Just throwing it out there. He's awfully silent. Have you noticed you haven't heard from him? Where is old Joe? Who is behind all of this? And by the way, while we're talking about national security and uranium ore in the United States of America, where's Dianne Feinstein in all this? The reason I mentioned Dianne Feinstein is because her husband is a genius businessman who has his fingers in pies around the world. He made armored vests, I understand, in Iraq that failed. He's done war contracts. Wonderful man, all-around wonderful man, Richard Blum. And I'm not sure he had anything to do with the uranium story. In fact, as of now, I see he has nothing to do with it, that I can tell. But we did find this. I haven't seen it on Fox either. What was the number? 500,000 to $1 million? Richard Blum gave $500,000 to $1 million to the Clinton Library, Clinton Foundation. Now, you don't think he gave that money because he wanted to get a stick of bubble gum for it, do you? Would you think Dianne Feinstein, sitting as the chairwoman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, would have known about this uranium scandal?